What's the password? Welcome to the Game Master Speakeasy. Brought to you by the record button.
Good day, and welcome to the Game Master Speakeasy. I see that you have found your way here. Thank goodness, because it's coming down out there. I want to say real quick, if you're listening to this at the time of release, Happy New Year!
Happy New Year!
Happy New Year! My name is Cody.
And I'm Lance.
I'm joined by my buddy Lance here, and we are here to talk to you today about our favorite thing to do, a couple of our favorite things to do when you're landlocked. Because what the heck else is there to do when you're landlocked besides play RPGs, run RPGs, and enjoy a nice little beverage here and there?
It's fair.
But we're here so come on in, pull up a chair, grab a drink, especially grab an age-appropriate drink for whatever age you are. But if you are, whether you be a player or a game master, all are welcome. But if you are a game master especially, come in, grab a seat next to the ever-burning hearth as we today talked what are we going to talk about today? We're going to talk about some news. We're going to talk about how to engage your players in your world, whether you're playing in an existing setting or you've made up a homebrew, which is one of the, in my opinion, most fun things to do as a game master, is to make up your own setting. But first, Lance, I have a couple pieces of news.
All right,
Have you figured out what 616 means yet?
No, I haven't. You've been pestering me with that since we got here and started
So Marvel is making a Marvel is making a tabletop RPG, or at least publishing it, and there is a playtest in February of 2022. The playtest booklet will be 104 pages. It's going to have it's going to be $9.99 for the playtest booklet. How do you feel about that?
It really depends on how much content's in the playtest booklet.
I feel like 104 pages is a lot for a playtest.
That's fair. I mean, I've paid more money for less than that in terms of gaming equipment. So
you take your significant other to Starbucks and you spend as much between the two of you, right?
Yeah, that's fair.
I mean, not you. In general. You're not going to Starbucks. You're not a Starbucks guy, but I just mean in general. I went to Starbucks.
Listen, I only like coffee if it's the flavor of the beer that I'm drinking.
So this game is slated to release, I think, the year after, but the playtest will come out in 2022. I don't remember all the stats, but the stats spell out Marvel, because it's like might and agility and whatever have you. It spells out Marvel, but
that almost seems a little try hard.
Well, yeah.
I mean, maybe it'll be a good game. I hope it's a good game, but I mean, it seems a little much.
That's six attributes. That's what, D&D has.
Yeah.
That's what D&D and Pathfinder. That's a classic, tried and true thing, is having 6 attributes. We've got the
Shadowrun did it too.
Originally, like in the early editions, because there's way more than that now, right? And then 4th or 5th edition,
they've
like 8 or 10.
Shadowrun technically had more, but the assigned attributes were only 6. Everything
Gotcha.
else was derived. I think the newer editions have as many as 8.
All right. So this Marvel cinematic, it's called the Marvel Multiverse Tabletop RPG, public playtest in February, and it's going to use a new game engine. It's going to use 3D6, but they call it the D616 system. Yeah. For those who aren't comic book fans or pay attention to the deep lore, Earth 616 is the primary universe.
Primary.
Yeah, it's the primary world for what has happened of most of Marvel's comic book history has happened on that universe in the multiverse. And so 104 pages with pre-made characters for existing heroes, and I think rules to make up your own. But the whole thing is that if you roll 2 6s and a 1, something like special happens. That's kind of like a crit.
All right.
Which if I did my math right, that's like a 3 in 216 chance, which is about 1.38 repeating 9. It's like a 1.39% chance.
So it better be something really cool, because you're not going to see it very often.
No. I imagine that'll be like a super. I hope so. We'll see when I'm interested in testing it out.
So have they kind of discussed any features to the game at all in the?
From what I've read, there isn't a whole lot.
Okay.
But I also haven't I haven't sought out like developer blogs or anything like that.
I'd be interested to see how they're going to handle different rules would affect different types of superpowers, or if it's going to be a very simplistic system just so they can kind of base cover it all.
Yeah, maybe.
You know what I mean? Like Spider-Man's slinging.
Would just be like a type. It would be a movement.
It would be
ability.
an acrobatics check or something like that, rather than having it be its own special set of rules.
Yeah, then have an entire rule set for web swinging.
Yeah.
Right. The second piece of news is which is something that I am particularly interested in. There is a system being made, a game being made by a company called Firelock Games. It is slated to release in 2022 sometime. I couldn't find when in 2022.
To be announced.
Maybe either to be announced or I just missed it. It's called War Stories, which is a World War II RPG. No weird occult stuff.
Just legit World War II combat.
World War II, where you assume the role of members of the either 101st Airborne, those that parachuted in, or the British 6th Airborne. Okay. And it's going to use the Mutant Year Zero engine, which is another system we have to run.
Yeah, I've never played it.
I've read about 80% of that and still would like to run it sometime.
My only experience with it was the actual video game. I played a little bit of that. I really enjoyed that, though.
So you have experience in the Mutant Year Zero game?
Just the video game, not the tabletop.
So we should play the tabletop, and we'd have at least an idea how this game will work. Yeah. But I don't know. I have always been growing up. I watched a lot of like World War II movies, like Enemy at the Gate and Saving Private Ryan and such. So I'm kind of stoked for that. But anyway, that's all I have for news. Why don't you tell me what recent happenings in what have you done tabletop related?
Well, our Pathfinder game for the week got canceled. That was our temporary replacement while you're on hiatus for.
Yes, our buddy is running a game in November that I get to play in, but we didn't run this week.
No, we didn't run this week. But Wednesday we did pick up Lancer. Kept going with that campaign.
For those who have not played or heard of it, Lancer is a mech-focused RPG.
And it's a lot of fun. It is. Every session, to me, seems to be more fun than the last one, which I think it's a good sign to the system.
And it's always kind of like, whenever you're playing a new system, let alone a new character, it's kind of, you're gaining your sea legs, right? It's not always that you can open up in a new character, get into their skin and roleplay really well, or you're figuring out your class mechanics or such, the way, or just the way the game works. So you guys are playing new characters and a new system, so there's growing pains always.
Yeah, but I mean, everybody seems to be picking it up fairly quickly, so that's a sign in the system's favor. Now, we had the previous session to this one, we had taken over a military outpost or destroyed all the enemy mechs, and we were looking to infiltrate the building that was there, which requires, of course, getting out of your mechs.
Yeah.
To get some information so we would know the next location we were supposed to hit.
Yeah, but how did you get into that building?
Well, I was designated as the leader of the group.
Yes,
and
you're the leader of the mercenary
I told
company.
our two most combat-focused, and by combat-focused, I mean their pilots actually have combat skills.
Yes. Outside of their mechs.
Yeah, as the group leader, I'm more into the charisma-based skills, charm, things like that.
The pilot skill triggers.
Yeah, the pilot skill triggers. So I sent the two guys in the group that were the heaviest as far as their overall combat skills, because, well, this was going to be them outside of their mechs actually fighting. And so our buddy Dan, who's playing his character Scorp, he just punched the door of the building to get inside, which I mean, it worked. The mech. He mech punched it.
Yeah, as a game master, it's always fun when you can see in the eyes of your players the joy in their face when they realize that what they want to do is going to work out great.
Yep.
And he's like, can I just punch the door with my mech? You can absolutely just punch the door with your mech.
And that is how they ingressed into this building initially, by mech punching the door through the door, and then they just went in, assaulted it, and
they took it over. You got the information.
Yeah, I think T-Bird just executed everybody.
T-Bird just went in and he took no prisoners.
No, there was none of that. I wasn't very specific with my orders. I just said capture the building.
You did capture the building, and then later when you guys attacked the supply outpost, I think Dan had the MVP moment again, because you guys were fighting against the. I had used for the first time a mech that was elite, meaning it's got more HP and such things, and. If you remember, I think it was last episode or the episode before, I swore that for the rest of the time I'd be running Pathfinder, I would not fudge dice. And it bled into this last week's Lancer session as well, because when the elite enemy, who only has a sword, just a huge Nodachi sword with a 3 space range, and he was ready to just tear you guys up. When he first lost a point of structure, had to roll on the chart, and he lost his weapon. And when I rolled that die, there was an urge inside of me to fudge, because if that dude loses his weapon, suddenly the rest of the encounter,
he was done. That was it.
There were not a lot of more big threats on the field. And that was it. So, but the oath for Pathfinder bled into Lancer, and I allowed it to happen. And I think that was the right call, because that made Dan feel like a badass.
Oh yeah, no, he was happier than shit when he swung that thing.
His mech draws his beam saber and crushes through the other mech's sword, rendering the elite enemy useless.
I kind of felt bad for him, actually. Not Dan, but the
the
elite.
NPC pilot.
Yeah, because literally only weapon the dude's got is this just really long, dangerous sword, and for a while he was chopping Dan up pretty good with it.
He was.
And then
Dan seems to be the one up in the face.
Yeah, for those unfamiliar with the Lancer rules, after you've taken a certain number of damage, you will lose a point of structure, and then your hit points reset, and it just kind of goes through that cycle till you've run through that. Well, every time your structure, or every time you lose all of your hit points and you lose a point of structure from it, it causes a system to fail, or even your mech could possibly blow up if you lost enough of them. And apparently the only system that he lost during that transaction was the one mount that he had.
Yeah. Because he rolled a 2, which on the chart is, all right, roll 50-50 chance. Now you lose one system or one weapon. And it rolled to lose a weapon, and he only had one weapon
to choose from, so...
So I am enjoying Lancer. I recommend it to anyone who likes giant robots. Most of the rules, most of the player-facing rules are available for free, and so really only the Game Master has to buy the PDF, I believe, that has like NPC information and other stuff like that.
And you can get online and use their CompCon app to manage your character, which is nice.
Yep. I still think that people should go through character creation at least once without using the assistant apps, so that you can really comprehend the rules. But it is, anytime you have like Path Builder or CompCon or something, it does really help speed up the process, especially for people that are really lazy about making their characters and wait till the day before the session to get it done.
What?
Or, not you.
I know.
You're very disciplined about it.
I know that. As somebody who has GM'd enough, my players don't come prepared, it irritates me a little.
It's a little irritating, but at some point you just gotta learn to pick your battles where you can.
But then, as a courtesy, when I'm playing, I always come prepared, because I wouldn't want the roles reversed.
Hey, everyone, any player listening, if you've never GM'd before, give it a try. You'll understand very soon. And anyone can do it.
You know, I would agree. I think every player should GM a minimum of like 3 sessions.
Minimum.
Just so that you understand what you're putting your GM through from time to time.
And a little empathy.
Little empathy, yep.
Speaking of players and the GM relationship, before we pop open today's topic, what beer are we drinking? Tell us about it.
I am currently about halfway through a mocha espresso barrel-aged porter.
We drink a lot of dark beer.
I do drink a lot of dark beer.
It's a lot of dark beer.
In defense, and the warmer months come up, I would imagine that I'll be filtering in something a little lighter colored than this. But I mean, for the most part,
Happy New Year!
Happy New Year!
We're in the Midwest, Nick. It's cold as heck.
How about you? What do you got in front of you?
This vanilla coffee lager, I can really taste the vanilla. It's very pleasant. I enjoy it a lot. Thank you for bringing it today.
Absolutely.
I was busy with a family thing.
With a family thing.
Yep. All right. So, now that we have got our drinks in front of us, what did you remember what I said today's topic was?
Yes, getting your players invested in your world.
That's right. How do you get your players invested in your world? I'm asking you this question. This is not hypothetical. Answer this question.
I think the biggest step that you can do as a GM, if you really want to get your players invested in your world, is to start out at character creation. Mm-hmm. I like to, if my players and me both have the time to do it, to sit down and help them with character creation, to build their character kind of already pre-stitched into the world.
Yeah.
You know, so that and I mean, depending on whether or not it is a homebrew world or kind of a partially homebrewed world, or whether you're using an already built world. sometimes, especially when you're talking about the homebrewed stuff, you can kind of build a portion of your world around that character to give them a feeling of kind of inclusion into that world. So I like to start with my characters at character creation, and like rather than just letting them make the character, I want us to make the character together. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? Find a way to fit their concept into the world that I'm playing in or the world that I'm game mastering in.
And that's a point in 5th edition's favor, because backgrounds kind of include that. You've got your traits, your bonds, your flaws, all that stuff that help people think about not just their character's kit, but who their characters, what their character's personality is.
Yeah, but I mean,
and especially bonds, because if you are bonded to an NPC or a place or something, that's a hook. That your players are fish and they come with a hook in their mouth in that regard.
Well, and it's nice too, like if you've got a character who says his concept is to be a part of a secret organization or an order of knights or something like that doesn't already exist in the game's canon.
Yeah.
Build it for them.
Yeah, absolutely. If you are willing to be a little bit malleable, you can find ways to incorporate their ideas into the canon. You know, it doesn't matter if you are playing in Paizo's Galarian or Forgotten Realms or Dark Sun. You know, as long as the player's idea, you believe it can fit into it, you can work with them to help create your version of the Forgotten Realms or your version of Galarian. That's your table that you're playing at.
And the more invested that the player is in the character and that the character is in the world, the easier it's going to be for both adventure hooks, the easier that it's going to be to get them to care enough about their character that they don't end up throwing them in the jaws of the first monster that comes along if they're having a couple of bad rolls.
It comes back to your character creation point, right? Where like it's a little bit baked into 5e, but I know something that we have often done is you provide a questionnaire to your players. Yeah. Hey, you know, what does your character hate? What do they like to do? You know, what would they do in this situation?
Once upon a time, long ago, there was, and I'm sure that they probably still have it in some incarnation, but there was a big Shadowrun forum. And on this Shadowrun forum, some guy had put together a 51-page questionnaire for Shadowrun characters.
I'm sorry.
I used to...
What?
Like some kind of absolute monster. This is not a good thing as a GM to do.
Okay.
But I used to subject my players to that.
To the whole 51.
The whole thing.
Maniac.
I mean, it was basically like making them fill out a long-form job application to play a character.
No wonder Dan hates character creation.
Yeah, that's probably part of it.
It's your fault.
It probably is. But in my defense, since then, most of my questionnaires have stayed under 10 questions, just to get some basic ideas of where the character fits in the cosmos. I think it is too. 50 is way too much.
51 pages.
No, not 51 pages, 51 questions.
51 questions.
Yes, 51.
That's still a lot.
That is a huge amount.
51 questions.
And you know what? Here's the thing. I used to fill it out for my characters too.
Yeah.
And it was horrible. In hindsight, probably not my finest GMing moment.
There's a lot of resources you can find on this. There's a lot of advice. You know, when I first started game mastering, it kind of aligned. A lot of people that are in the hobby will be familiar with the name Matt Colville. He was a writer at Turtle Rock Studios. He's got his own couple of kickstarted books for the 5th edition setting, and he's got a series of videos on YouTube called Running the Game, and that was actually something that helped me learn a lot as I got started. And he talks about having your characters' inspirations and things like that, and roping them into the world. But I'm going to talk about NPCs.
Okay.
So I interrupted you.
I was just going to say,
before I continue.
You're kind of fortunate because you started GMing after this stuff was all very widespread on the internet.
Oh yes, yeah.
Like when I started game mastering, YouTube wasn't even a thing.
That's true. Yeah,
Matt Colville existed because he predates me in this industry as far as I'm aware.
When you were GMing, logging into the internet screamed at you.
Yeah, no, it did.
AOL was very upset.
Yeah,
it sounded like it was dying every time you tried to get onto the internet.
For all you kids out there, just Google dial-up noises, okay? Because that's what I had to endure when the internet started. That's also how old I am.
You had to worry about someone answering the phone.
Yep.
Yeah.
Hey, producer, throw in some dial-up noises.
All right, for those of you that are still with us after that nightmare, You make a really valid point. It is very fortunate, I think, for me, that I started game mastering RPGs during this time period where I have all these resources online.
And I think to your benefit, what you've kind of been able to do is cram a lot of years of learning into a shorter period of time.
Oh yeah,
because you've been able to utilize these resources. And this is why, despite the fact that you've only been GMing for what, 4-ish years now?
About 4.
4-ish years now?
Yeah,
I would say that you have as much experience as...
I think it was probably around October or November of 2017. So we're coming up. I believe we've just hit the 4-year anniversary.
I would say that you have, just due to the excess of resources, as much experience as I probably had 15, 20 years into the game.
Yeah, there's so many different places I can draw from. Like, Monty Cook has written books about games. The guy that was, I think he was, no one, I could be misattributing, but I think he was lead designer of D&D 3.5. I know he was very important to the development team during that time period. He's made Cypher Numenera since then, Black Sun. You've got Matt Colville. There's all these different channels and resources. And you come to us. We're another resource. If you've stumbled on us, we are ourselves adding ourselves to that pool.
Oh, absolutely.
Right? Here's just. It's very much a standing on the shoulders of giants kind of situation where I can draw upon the experience of those that have come before me.
Yeah, see, and when I started, we didn't really even have internet resources when I first started, and shortly thereafter, the Shadowland, I think it was the Shadowland.net, I think was the web address for it way back in the day, and that was really kind of the first big Shadowrun forum. Eventually, Pinnacle put together a forum for Deadlands that is still around today on their site, I think.
Pinnacle being the people
Deadlands
and more
Deadlands, Savage Worlds.
More popularly these days is Savage Worlds,
yeah,
because it's adaptable to many settings.
But yeah, I mean, then they have their forums, but I mean, other than that, I had very little.
You had Jack.
Yeah, I didn't have experienced people like Matt Colville to listen to. I couldn't watch things like Critical Role.
Yeah, digressing. So far we've got basically you want to ask questions. You want to rope people's character creation right into the world. And on that, you go ahead.
And don't be afraid if your players, if you give them that questionnaire and the answers come out that very contrary to the world that you're building, to sit down with that player and find a way to make those work. To come back and say, hey, so this, the answer that you gave me to this question, it doesn't really fit with the setting. How can we kind of nudge it in one direction or another to get it to fit into the setting?
Yeah, it's and players, for those players that are listening, if your GM isn't asking you questions about your backstory, but you'd like to, never ever write the 30-page backstory. You only need a page.
Yeah.
But your GM most GMs, I promise you, most of them will appreciate that you put time and effort into doing that, and it's going to help them bring your character into the world and tie things together.
And sometimes it's just writing down questions and answers. I've always kind of been of the mind that you can either answer a handful of questions, or if you want to write me a story for your character, I'll take that instead. I would actually much rather have the story, but I do understand that not everybody is a writer.
No, not
everybody. I mean, there are various levels of talent when it comes to writing, and there are some people that are just not good at writing at all.
Well, that could be because you used to give bonus character creation points for written stories back in Deadlands.
Yep.
And what you can do is, rather than judge on quality of writing, ensure that that it hits enough points. Does this little narrative provide an origin for the character? Does it provide inspirations for the character? Motivations, yeah. So if it hits those points, then you can reward things like that.
Yeah, and I mean, I don't want to pick on anybody for bad writing. At the end of the day, the story is what I want, but if it's not great, that doesn't matter. I mean, as long as it answers some questions.
Not everyone has a proclivity towards grammar, and that's something anyone can work on.
I mean, not that I would expect him to do it, but I mean, I feel like Dan is a good example of this. I would rather have him write me a comic book.
Oh God!
Problem is the amount of time he'd have to invest in writing a backstory comic book would be crazy. But his talent is artwork; it's drawing.
So in addition to players writing up stories and answering questions, you can also, GMs, write a primer before you start your campaign. As you know, I did one
Yeah.
for my home Pathfinder campaign.
Give them
Especially if you're making your own homebrew world, you can write a short blurb about the world, different ancestries, places in the world, different classes, places in the world. For example, in my homebrew setting, the Pathfinder 2 Magus is a class that is usually attributed to the Mage Hunters, right? That's kind of a...
Yeah, but you had the Mage Hunters before the Magus came out, but yeah, I see how
Correct.
that fits now. Actually,
Yes.
that makes a lot of sense.
That was always when they teased a Gish, which is a magic fighter. When they teased a Gish, that was always the plan. Is I was waiting for Magus to come out. That is usually where Magus in my world come from, is being from the Mage Hunting Society, things like that, or various races or ancestries. The various ancestries have different. Origins or the way they fit into the world. Like, for instance, all the genie folk, or those that are plane touched, you've got your people with their elemental heritages. Those usually originate from a city at the center of the continent, rather than, oh, so and so fell in love with a genie, which that could also happen, but generally they come from the city of Primar, for example. So you can write a primer, and I apologize, GMs, but not everyone in your party is going to read it.
I was just about to say that. Don't be mad.
Yeah, don't.
You're going to have players that are there for the game. They don't think about gaming all week long. They show up for your game session, and they enjoy the hell out of it. But if you start giving them homework, they're just not going to do it.
Yeah, some players do not want to do homework, which is unfortunate. Players, try and do your homework.
Yeah,
if you can find time in the week, your game master will love it. That you even if you don't read the whole primer, you at least read the section about your race and class.
The things that would most apply to your character are usually worth reading. If dedicate 10 to 15 minutes a week to homework if you can get away with it. If you have the time, do it. It makes life easy for everybody. But GMs, remember, if you hand your players a novel, there's going to be one or two people in the group that just aren't going to read it, and that's okay. They've got other things to do.
Have you, as a player, ever been sad about the loss of an NPC?
Oh, man. I want to say yes, but I'm not pulling any out of my head right now. I'm trying to,
How did you feel about when we lost the Daddy Dragon in the Nine Hells?
I honestly think I was a little less affected than everybody else was.
Yeah.
But I also think that I was playing Aram at the time.
What if you had lost
correctly.
Talbot in the Nine Hells?
Talbot, I think, would have been a little harder. Talbot had been around the group for a while. The Big Daddy Dragon that we had with us at the time. I mean, Aram has never been a particularly emotional character, so I think a lot of it would have been dependent on who I was playing at the time. If I'd been playing Tusk, I think the reaction would have been different.
Oh, yeah.
Because, I mean, Aram was kind of a bit of a sociopath, I guess, in a lot of ways.
His mind is fractured.
He's a little bit broken.
It's beyond sociopath.
I mean, if you're really...
literally, his ego and id were split in twain.
Yeah, that's true. If you really wanted to screw with him, you'd have to screw with Soraya or his kid.
That's right. So,
either of those two.
But do you understand the point I'm making?
No, I do understand the point you're making.
Engaging NPCs help draw your players into the world. Mm-hmm. If your players engage with NPCs, try and keep those NPCs around or engaged in the story. Don't turn them into DMPCs where they're hogging the spotlight. But if your players care about them, whether it be an NPC you created in the hopes that they would be an enriched patron of the party or an adventuring companion, maybe it's just the person who tends to the horses, but they have a lot of charm to them, or maybe it's Boblin the Goblin that they picked up in the forest. Not the players aren't always going to latch onto the NPC you want them to latch onto,
but they might latch on
but
to
they'll
somebody.
probably latch on to some NPCs.
Well, I'm glad that you brought that up, because Saria, to give you guys a little background, my warlock in 5e, who has since been converted over to Pathfinder, although we haven't played him yet,
soon.
He, during a trip to the Feywild, started a bit of a relationship with a Eladrin. Mm-hmm. And when he found out that the big bad evil guy knew about her, he started taking some very extreme measures to keep her safe. That was all before the traitor's toast.
Yes, before the traitor's toast.
Yeah, this was all before that, but I mean, he was very invested in trying to make sure that she was safe. Partially because of the relationship, but I almost think in Aram's mind more because it was leverage.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, that's true.
If Victor had her, that would have been a chink in Aram's otherwise inflappable
Emotional
state.
armor,
Yeah,
yeah.
exactly. And now they have a kid together, so that's even better. I'm waiting to see how Cody
liability.
tries to screw me over with that. But
It's a liability.
But yeah, I mean, there's definitely ways to get your players emotionally invested in
NPCs.
In NPCs.
I think for me, NPCs are one of the single most powerful tools to get your players caring about the world.
I mean, the dwarf that betrayed us
For an NPC.
For an NPC.
He betrayed the entire party because of an NPC that I improv'd on the fly and then later fleshed out.
because he's a thirsty bitch.
And long story short, if you come up with NPCs, whether they start off being one-dimensional or start off three-dimensional, if your players start to seem like they are gaining attachments, flesh that character out. Get them more involved.
Run the attachment. Make the attachment a thing.
Yeah. And if you really want it to be dramatic, you can put that character in danger. Especially, that'll really spur the party's inspiration. Especially, because I would go as far as to say that Talbot is the most beloved NPC in my Forgotten Realms campaign.
That's his first statement.
And you guys were willing to fight to rescue him from.
We literally went to hell to get him back.
You literally went to you literally went to hell to get him back, and you literally went to hell to get back Ulrich, who was a captured player character.
Yeah.
But still, you've got two beloved NPCs. You will go to hell and back to get them.
And I mean, a lot of this building up, finding a way to attach a player to your world is there to drive the motivation of the storyline.
It is, yeah.
I mean, even badass adventurers, convincing them to dive headfirst into hell, that's a hard sell for anybody.
It is.
You have to be able to get them into a position where they're invested enough in the NPCs or the world itself that when you want, as a game master, to direct the campaign toward the Nine Hells, then you have to have that leverage on your players to get them there. Otherwise, they're going to refuse. I mean, it really comes down to motivation more than anything else. So
And
there's
at the
no
end
motivation to go.
At the end of the day, if it's not a railroad, they could abandon that NPC.
Yeah.
They could. But then that's going to have heavy story implications.
But, well, not only heavy story implications, but if there's an emotional investment in that
Yeah.
NPC, there's going to be emotional implications.
It usually starts drama within the party, which is as long as people aren't hating each. It's very fun as the dungeon master or game master to see your players argue. They are or not rather. It's not the players that are arguing in these situations. It's the characters.
Yeah, as long as it's the characters that is doing that.
It's dramatic. Like the argument that we just had. You guys got Ulrich back, and then he wants to go to the islands, and Leah wants to go to the high forest.
Yep.
And that created tension because that's how you create drama.
Yeah.
It's tension and then resolution.
For sure.
And that is a wonderful tool to keep in your back pocket. Pay attention. Here's another thing you can do. In addition to the NPCs, another way to get your players invested in the world is take careful consideration of what your players like to pay attention to. If your players, there's usually the player that likes to role play going to the general store, and there's some players that do not care. They just are willing to say, "Hey, I want to spend 5 silver and get a dagger."
How much is this item? Cool. I'm going to subtract that amount of currency from my thing.
Don't make that player role play the general store trip if it's not important to the story.
Not only that, because if it's that player alone that's going to do it, the rest of the party is typically sitting there doing nothing. So if the player is not going to enjoy the interaction with the shopkeep, then just hand wave it. Just, here, okay, subtract this amount of money from your character. Here's your dagger.
But that same player, if that same player seems to take interest in forbidden knowledge, tease them with tomes and books, or they pay attention to, just take note, at least a mental note, of which players, not their characters, but which players seem to be interested in different things, because some players like role-playing with shopkeepers, some actually will like learning about the history of the world, the hidden history of the world, and that's awesome. Those players can help lead the rest of the party into the greater, what's the word I'm looking for? The greater adventure. The greater foray into the hidden knowledge, the esoteric lore
I don't consider this a bad thing, but I feel like this is almost redirected into the best ways to manipulate your players' instruction.
Well, that's what you're doing. Because you don't want to railroad
No,
your players.
no, you don't, but
you can gently push them.
For sure.
You
Well,
can nudge them where you want to go.
Take Leah, for example. If you want to get Leah motivated to do anything, wreck a forest.
Yeah, that's all you got to do. She's an elven ranger.
Yep, she is. She's an Eladrin. She's a ranger. You know, the forest is her jamalama. So at the end of the day, if you want to push her,
a jamalama.
If you want to push her, or if you want to get her, more importantly, to push the rest of the group in a given direction, have some demons burning down a forest. That's all you have to do.
That's all you got to do. Just have the dude show up and be like, "The forest is under attack." That's up.
That's it.
Nature is threatened.
She's knocking an arrow back, and she's yelling at the rest of the party to get there.
If you got a ranger or druid in your party, it's practically a surefire way to do
exactly.
that.
And that's as a GM, that's okay. It's better to manipulate your players into going the direction that you want than to railroad them into going the direction that you want.
Yeah, and because at the end of the day, they might say no because you've put maybe you've put a second event on the table, and they have to choose between who they're going to help. And now you've created more interesting drama
and conflict.
And conflict. You've got a situation where, hey, do we go save the forest or do we go help the knights over on the islands, kill all the pirates that are raiding the coast? What else? You got any other ideas to help your players stay engaged in the lore? I like magic items. You like magic items?
Magic items.
Do you like
good.
getting magic items?
Yeah. You know, what I like really is the kind of reveals about the big bad evil guy that you don't always expect.
Oh yeah.
Like, it was one of the dungeons that you had us do, and I'm trying to remember which character I was playing at the time.
Tell me about the dungeon.
It was the dungeon. It was right after we found, was it the Aboleth, that big catfish-looking thing?
Oh yeah. I think you were Tusk at the time.
I think I was Tusk at the time too, because I don't remember playing another
half-orc warrior or something
yeah.
like that. Half-orc fighter.
And when we were down in that vault, that was one of Victor's vaults. Victor's the big bad evil guy in our 5e campaign. There was some history about him in there.
There was, yes. That you learned. Easter eggs.
It's
basically
Easter eggs.
Easter eggs about the villains or important characters.
His lineage specifically.
That's
that
right.
we came from. Turns out his family was actually pretty heroic, and that he
back in the day, in ages past.
Yeah, and turns out he's a colossal dick.
he's a huge. That's why he's the bad guy.
That's true.
So yeah, that comes back to the quest that your players are on. Easter eggs about the main mission, the main adventure. The main mystery, little hints that'll help.
And I think revealing the presence of those Easter eggs in a way leads us to want to get more of the Easter eggs.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like it's a very subtle tool, but the fact that now that we know that there is a history about this guy out there somewhere, and that apparently he keeps bits of it or little bits of it hidden in his vaults, or at least in this particular vault, is almost its own motivation for us to continue to seek out his hidey holes to see if we can figure out, what we need to know about this guy. Because, powerful as he is, I feel like in order for us to beat him, we're going to have a trump card.
That kind of rounds back to providing your players with intel. Because if you don't give an example, if you don't show them that this character has a recorded history of the lineage out there, they're not going to know. You're the game master. You've got everything in your brain. Sure, he's got an ancient history, but if you don't leave a clue, the players are going to have no idea. You might expect them to be curious about their lineage, but if they don't know that they can find that, they might not think to look for it.
And it's a nice indirect way to provide a third dimension to what would otherwise be a two-dimensional villain.
Right. Oh, yeah. Because you're
being an overpowered evil wizard it's cliched enough that, it's been done so many times before. You have to give this guy motivations and reasons for doing what he's doing. Evil for evil's sake is boring in any capacity at all. Whether it's writing or movies or tabletop games, it doesn't matter. If your dude is just cartoonishly evil and there's no reason for it, then it kind of becomes a joke.
Which is fine if you're playing like a beer and pretzels get together slapdash kind of game, but if you're trying to make a real dramatic narrative arc,
legit epic tale, you have to flesh.
There's nothing wrong with either. It depends on what you're playing for, right?
And for those people that follow anything in media, who are your favorite villains? They're always the most fleshed out and interesting ones, often the sympathetic ones.
Yeah.
The ones that you're like, yes, it's evil and what he's doing is bad, but I can at least understand why he made the choices that he made.
It humanizes the character. Mm-hmm. Right? You've got, let's take Vader, for example.
Oh, yeah.
He's a villain, but then you find out that some bad stuff happened to him, and you end up finding out that it's Luke's father. And at the end of the Star Wars original trilogy storyline, he turns out to be kind of the hero, because he's the one that throws the Emperor down the space well.
Spoiler alert.
Yeah, oh, sorry, yeah. I guess if you haven't seen Star Wars yet...
Movies that came out in the 70s and 80s?
Yeah, Vader is Luke's father.
Yeah, oops.
My bad. But yeah, you create a sympathetic villain, and I did that with these little Easter eggs. Mm-hmm. And I could see the looks on some of your faces when you read that letter to his sweetie.
Yeah.
Because that's what you found is among lineage stuff. You found that this guy, this big bad evil guy, his number one motivation is love.
Yep. And that is something that Aram, being a sociopath, would probably choose to use against him.
Oh yes, probably likely. But I'll be interested to see, because we've taken a whole year break from that campaign, and we're about to start up again, so it'll be interesting to
see how I feel about the witch as a class.
Yeah, I think it'll be fine.
I hope it will. I think the problem it's going to force me to change my play style entirely, because there is no equivalent to the Warlock in Pathfinder from a mechanical standpoint.
Yeah, not a 1-to-1 yet.
No, I mean not even close to a 1-to-1.
So what else? Anything else before we wrap up that topic? Any other major points about how to get your players invested?
No, I don't think so.
So in summation, see if you can get your players to help tie their backstory into the world ahead of time.
It starts with character creation.
Yeah, it does. It can start with character creation, where you try and get them to, write a primer, ask them how their characters are roped into the world, ask them questions. What do you want? What does your character want to achieve? What do they hate? What do they fear? Those types of things.
Find a way to tie their character into the world at character creation, and you will have done yourself a huge favor starting early on.
But don't force it.
No.
Because if you've ever played a character where you left a lot of their backstory open, it's sometimes fun to discover traits about their character after the fact, as through role playing because when I first played a dwarven fighter and you were playing a goblin, I kind of decided in our first role play interaction that I didn't like goblins. I did not decide that ahead of time.
Yeah,
and it made for some interesting.
And I do kind of leave a lot of intentional gaps in my character stories to help fill those out, because there'll be some times where something will happen and the players will be discussing it, and it's nice to have enough vagary that I can just fill it in with some completely made-up on-the-fly story stuff.
Yeah, and then you can write on your character sheet after that encounter, is afraid of spiders, or something like that.
Witches.
Or, is afraid of witches.
I mean, Bog was not built to be afraid of witches.
Yeah, so see if you can get your players to buy into your setting at character creation, provide them with the tools to do so, engage them with their favorite NPCs, and leave tidbits of information about the things that they're interested in, Easter eggs to keep them hooked. As samplers, you go to the store and they're showing, hey, you want a sample? Heck yeah, I want a little taste of free food.
I never buy those things though.
Yeah, but you still eat the sample, right?
Yeah, I do eat the sample.
All right. So I think I hope that you have enjoyed your time here today, and you have learned a little bit about. At least a little skosh about engaging your players to the world. Remember, don't be offended if they don't read your whole primer. It's they're there to play with you, and you're hopefully facilitating collaborative storytelling together. Oh, that's last call, according to Grognar anyway. But if you want more of us, you can find us on recordbuttongroup.com, along with the other shows produced by The Record Button. You can find The Record Button on Facebook and Twitter and Instagram, where you can find updates and news. Please share us with your friends. We're on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and YouTube, where you can rate and review us, maybe even drop a comment, pretty please. We want to hear from you. You can also reach us directly at gmspeakeasyofficial@gmail.com. Shoot us your questions, comments, concerns, or compliments. Until the next time, I'm Cody.
And I'm Lance.
And this has been the Game Master Speakeasy. Please get home safe.